We breaking bread, yeah. We breaking bread, yeah. We breaking bread, yeah. One conversation at a time. We breaking bread, yeah. We breaking bread, yeah. We breaking bread, yeah. One conversation at a time.
The Breaking Bread Village.
One conversation at a time.
The Breaking Bread Village.
One conversation at a time.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Breaking Bread Village. I'm really excited to have our guest on tonight. We have Ryan with us today, Ryan Kelley, and I'm going to let him introduce himself. So let me bring him on to the show. Hey, Ryan.
Hey, Erin. How are you tonight, ma'am?
I am well. I'm really excited, as I just stated to the audience, to have you here so we can have this conversation. And I'm going to let you go ahead and introduce yourself. You can tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I appreciate you asking me to come on and join you. We've had a couple of amazing phone conversations here over the last few days leading up to today. I live in the West Michigan area, and I am a man of God. I'm a husband. And I'm a father of my third son, my fifth child. We just recently had our fifth baby, a home birth, and I know connected.
Congratulations.
And we had a home birth there. Our midwife came and assisted us, and we've had all home births. So we got a chance to connect on that. And I'm a blogger as well. My wife and I make YouTube videos. I'm a real estate broker, and just love America and be involved in what our country is doing.
Awesome. Yes, we did. We did find something that we connected on. That was, the joys of home births and having natural birth. And so I think that's amazing. So we're going to just get right to it because I'm really excited to have this conversation. I know, again, like we mentioned, you and I have talked before in regards to some things. I kind of heard about you through the grapevine, and people always refer to you as the Patriot, and how you were very passionate about America, and and as I shared with you, I kind of was introduced to you in a negative undertone, right? Where people were saying that you were, racist, and you were, a neo-Nazi, and you were helping to kind of usher in this whole new people have some really elaborate stories, right? About this new neo-Nazi, movement, and that are masked behind, militia groups. So me being me, I decided to reach out to you because I wanted to talk to you myself and just kind of understand a little bit more about your perspective, because I know I saw you on a couple videos, at the different monuments, protecting statues, and kind of a counter protester, so to speak, as we like to call it now. We call the protest on one side and then the counter protest. So I just want you to kind of explain to me a little bit more about that, because I really believe that everybody should be able to quote unquote defend themselves or give their perspective. So that's what I want to give you an opportunity to do.
I appreciate that. And first of all, I'd like to mention that I have a tremendous amount of respect for you for stepping out of what you could have very easily said, that guy's a terrible person, right? Because so-and-so said so. This person said that. So he has to be a terrible person, right? And you said, well, okay, I heard what you said, but let me do just a little bit of investigating myself. And you reached out, we connected, we talked, you shared some things, I shared some things. Maybe there's still some differences, of course, because how boring would life be if we all agreed on everything? But you got to understand who I was enough to bring us to having this conversation. So just before we get into it, I just want to let you know that I have a tremendous amount of respect for you for that.
Thank you.
I greatly appreciate that. You mentioned the Patriot, right? And I would like to read a definition to you here, if I could.
Sure.
What a definition of a patriot is. A person who vigorously supports their country and is prepared to defend it against enemies and detractors. Pretty interesting definition. You really think about what that is, right? What does that mean to, vigorously defend your country and be prepared to defend it against enemies and detractors? a lot of people could have different thoughts because people have different thoughts about what their country means to them. But at the end of the day, the definition stands. And that definitely fits me. I don't know if my name pops up on the screen for the people watching here.
Oh, yeah, they can see it.
The Patriot, right? I absolutely am a patriot. As you see behind me here with the flag, and it says, "Blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord." Right? That sits in my office, and I can look at this every day. I'm very blessed for what we have here in this country. And I'm also saddened to see the state of the country that we're living in right now, with so many unaware of the blessings that we do have in this country. And I'm also it saddens me greatly that we, the people, have allowed our elected employees, the ones that represent us, to get so far from what the Constitution itself is stating and how this country really should be. And I know that that's part of the topic that you want to talk about tonight. So maybe I'll plant that seed and we can come back to that in a minute.
Sure.
You asked a little bit about the statues and that kind of stuff there. So yeah, you did contact me and you said, hey, there's some protesters for the statue, and they had communicated with you and shared the Facebook Live video that I think has close to 250,000 views on it now. There was a ton of support. There was some people that had some negative things about it. From my perspective, I respect everybody's First Amendment right in order to protest and state their case. But with that becomes peacefully, right? Peacefully protest. That doesn't involve breaking things and destroying things and lighting things on fire. And so I made it very clear, and I think you even heard that in the live stream that I did, that, hey, we need to be respectful to these people. They are here voicing their opinion, and they have every right to voice their opinion in a peaceful way. And vice versa, we could be there voicing our opinion, and protecting what we have as our rights as well.
Sure.
When it comes to the statue, I mean, we see statues being torn down around the country. And, I guess here on this show, I'm going to go ahead and state my true feelings about the statue. Statue, right? Yeah. The statue to me doesn't mean or do anything. And I wasn't there saying that this statue is so important that we have to keep it. But what I was doing was saying that we are going to stand, that people are not going to come to our town and destroy this statue, right? Was it their intention to tear the statue down? Maybe, maybe not. Was an armed militia there guarding, saying, hey, we're going to leave this up and we're going to do it the right way? Did that deter them? Maybe, right? Who knows? Because it turned out the way that it did. But in the end, I think there was a lot of really good conversations. There was a lot of rude people to me. And they said some very mean things. And that's okay, because I'm grounded in truth and who I am.
Sure.
I had some very good conversations with some people, and a few people said some things where I'm like, that is a really good point, right? I have nothing to say to that because that's intelligent and smart, and thank you for saying it like that. And then vice versa, that's how stuff like that happens, just having those good real life conversations kind of in the emotional moment sometime.
No, I agree. And you know what? I'm glad you touched on that about being secure in who you are. And, I just want to thank you for appreciating this space, because it is important to me. It's very important to be able to have open dialogue respectfully, and as I mentioned to you before, as long as you and I, which we have, are able to respect each other, I'm good with whatever position a person brings, because I am confident in who I am. So I don't need, you know what I mean? I don't need your validation, just as I'm sure you don't need mine, to stand on what you believe. So it's like, I think once you're secure in your position and who you are, you can hear other people, because it's not going to, you're not going to waver and kind of sway around, because you're okay with who you are. So if you said something to me and called me a name, or was disrespectful to me, it really wouldn't do anything to me, because I know that I'm not that. You get what I'm saying? So I'm confident in this. So it's like, hey, it has no power. So that's why I'm able to give people, a fair shake, because it's like, I think we all kind of come from different perspectives, different backgrounds and different experiences. So we should be able to do this respectfully. So I appreciate that. And then just to kind of talk about what you just said about the statues and being there to defend them. I talked to a few people and they said that, the statues really don't mean that much to me. but I'm here defending them. What is it? Is it because of the destruction of it? Is that why they're so defended? And I know some of them mean a lot to a lot of people. Like they really do have some, hold some power. So what was it for you? Was it just the where you say, okay, this is my community or this is someone's area and I don't want to destroy it? Was that more so kind of what you felt about it?
Yeah. I suppose that's a decent way of looking at it. Approach means a lot. And I think you just kind of touched on that a little bit too, right?
Sure.
How you approach certain situations.
Sure.
I think the group that approached this situation didn't approach it necessarily in the best way.
Okay.
And so, hey, that's just one opinion, right? I don't know how other people took to that.
Sure.
But I was there, saying that, these people are not going to just come into this town and just bully people into saying, hey, just rip it down because that thing offends me. And like you mentioned a minute ago, when you're grounded in who you are, things offend you a lot less. So for these people to get offended by every little thing, right? They're not grounded in who they are, and they're looking for external emotions in order to try to find channels to get that energy out.
Sure.
And so, yeah, I mean, that's kind of the basis of where I was at. I mean, to just come in there, all that offends me now, just go ahead and start ripping it down. And maybe it has to do with a little bit of seeing the entire country, right? Statues just getting ripped down right and left. And I mean, and no statue is safe, right? It's just mind-boggling to see some of the monuments and statues that have been defaced that have spanned the wide array of American experiences. Like it's just interesting. So I think there was just a group of us that just said, hey, look, let's if you want the statue down and we're going to talk about this, we're not going to come here and just destroy it. And we had no reason to believe that they wouldn't. And so. Right.
Sure. Now, what statue was it? Someone was asking what statue it was that you were standing next to in that video. Do you remember the statue?
I do. I know it very well, actually. I'm going to see if I have a picture of it. So the statue is a Union and a Confederate soldier from
that's right, with the
Civil War. Yep. Yeah, that's not a good picture of it. There. No, come on. Okay, I don't know that I have a good picture of it, actually.
I think it was like a little
Confederate soldier standing back to back, and then below them, there's what is made out to be a slave boy, and he's holding a tablet out between the two of them that says "Freedom to Slaves." So there's lots of controversy from both sides, right? Sure. And I see both sides of the argument. I absolutely do.
Right.
And so that's what was causing all the controversy.
Okay. So again, let's go. Okay. So the racism part. So a lot of times people see, I mean, we're just going to be honest. You see a bunch of white guys, bald head, with these beards and the AR-15s and, coming through with camo gear on. A lot of people associate that with white supremacy. I mean, that's just a reality. When people see that, is it right or wrong? It's not right to ever assume what a person is, but we've been given that image. Okay, I believe that, the media helps perpetuate those images. Different people who are actually that help perpetuate that image. So we've been given these images, and people say, well, there are racists, and of course, let's be honest. In every group that we have, there may be some people that feel very strongly, because I know people that don't like white people. Okay, I know people that would be disgusted that I'm even talking to. Well, they are disgusted that I'm even talking to you as a white person from a different position. So it's just the way it is, right? People have groups that don't like the other. Do you feel like a lot of the groups that you've been associated with are racist? That they're doing it because of the black voice of Black Lives Matters, because most of these rallies that I saw, I'm not saying all of them, were Black Lives Matter protesters. So do you think that the groups that you were with were kind of there as we're against Black Lives Matter, or is it more just the position of you're not going to deface it no matter who you are?
Great question. Let me preface my answer with a couple of questions, if that's okay.
Sure. Yeah.
So when we talk about the word racism, right? It's so easily thrown around these days, right? Oh, that's racist. That's racist. That's racist, right? Everything's racist, right? Right. And a lot of times somebody they can't get in anywhere with an argument like, oh, you're racist, right? And then they move on. What does that word mean to you? Like, if you had to define it, what would that mean to you?
Sure. So racism is when a person has power over someone else, right? That's how the definition for me that I've seen it is when a person has that type of power and can make decisions over someone else and they treat them bad because of it. So that's why a lot of people say that, Black people or natives cannot be racist, that they can be prejudiced, but not racist because systematically we don't have that power. And this is when you go back to like the whole white privilege, when you go back to systemic racism. So that's what it means to me, just kind of in short.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
I'm going to real quick, if you don't mind, read the definition from Merriam-Webster.
Please do. The definition
of racism is a belief that race is the primary determinant of human traits and capabilities, and that racial differences produce an inherent superiority of a particular race. Similar to what you just said there, right? And then it also goes into talking about racial prejudice or discrimination. So that could even be something along the lines when like, oh, there's these white guys with beards, right? That's racial prejudice. Oh, they got white, their skin's white and they got beards and they're bald head and they're wearing camo gear, right? Racial prejudice, that's a white supremacist. So, and another question there too, like when you like, what's the definition of white supremacy to you? Like, what is that category? Like when you look at like the people you're talking about, how does that define to you?
It goes, for me, it still goes back to a position of power. That's how I look at it, in the way that it has been shown throughout history that when you think about supreme or superior, and see, so let me just back up a little bit. So I personally do not believe that anybody is more superior than me. Okay. And I'm not trying to sound like arrogant at all, but I don't believe that somebody, because they look different from me, is better than me. Okay. So I try to be very careful about calling anybody a white supremacist, because to me, I am giving them power over me. Okay, by saying they are more supreme than myself, which gives me now that I am inferior to them. So I'm very careful about that. But I know for a lot of people, white supremacy does encompass this whole superior race, supreme race. And that's how I see it. That's the kind of like the general consensus sometimes. So that's my answer for general.
So the mindset that a white person feels that they are superior to other people. The definition from Merriam-Webster says that a person who believes that the white race is inherently superior to other races and that white people should have control over other people of other races, kind of touching on what you said there a couple of minutes ago. And you're smart, and I like you, because you said that you don't give that power to someone else, right? People can think what they want to think, right? I can do two fun things right now. I can say with conviction that that's not how my mind and heart works, right? That's exciting for me to know, because like you said, that you're on equal playing ground with everyone. I truly believe in my heart, when the Declaration of Independence says we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I believe that. I do. And that's exciting for me to understand that, because that puts me at a place of conviction to know that I can share my values with anyone, and I can relate to anyone. Now, some people work harder than others. Some people, they're not going to take the time to put in the effort to do the things that you're doing here and put this show together and do the streaming set from here to there and there and this and that. And they can come up with excuses. Well, Aaron, why didn't you do this? Well, I didn't do it because I was tired and this other stuff, but you're putting in the effort, right? So you're taking those gifts and you're using that playing field that you created for yourself. You've created the equal playing field for yourself, and you've given yourself that permission, because you're right. You don't need it from anybody.
And I do agree with you personally, right? But I also know that, just being honest, there has been times in my life and other people's life that I know, where there has been some, injustices based on skin color, and we know that's. I mean, I think that we can be honest and say that happens, right? Some people can work 1,000% and still not get the same opportunities that other people get. There is some things that are, and then also back to, when things were written back then, people owned slaves. So there's always this question of, although it was written and said that it was for all people, right? And we believe that now, because we do believe that we are all free. Some of us to an extent, some people believe, right? At that time, people questioned, okay, was that made for all people because they had slaves at that point? Which brings me to my next point, because I want you to talk about the Constitution. When we talked the other day, you brought up some really good points about the First and Second Amendment, and I want you, because you're very passionate about that. And there were things, honestly, that you showed me, because I had no clue. Because as I told you, growing up in school, even though we had to learn, the three branches of government and blah blah blah, it really wasn't talked about much in regards to the Constitution. I don't recall. Maybe I wasn't paying attention. That could definitely be the case too in school. But I want you to talk a little bit about that, about the First and Second Amendment, because I know you told me that you really believe that all people are afforded these same opportunities, in the sense that when they, if we go back and look at the Constitution right now, they are applied to all people. And that's what you said that you fight for. So I want you to talk a little bit about that, like how we talked the other day, the First and Second Amendment and your passion behind that.
Definitely. And I'd like to, if I could, real quick, touch a little bit on, you said, like, when the Constitution was wrote, and the Constitution has evolved over time, right? There's been amendments that have happened, but when we're talking about the Declaration of Independence, right? And then we're talking about the Bill of Rights, right? Those first 10, and then some of the couple after that came in the years after that.
Sure.
It was during the time that there were slaves here in America. Just a question here. Do you agree that there's been slavery throughout all of human history, including today in the modern day?
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's always existed. It's terrible in everything.
What you're asking me, like, do I believe that other people have been enslaved other than Black people? Is that what you're asking?
Not specifically that question there, just that slavery has existed in all of human history, as far back as we can see with history. Through biblical times, even in modern day. I mean, there's a problem with children slavery today. The child sex slave trafficking is ridiculous.
Sure.
In modern day.
Yeah, women too. But yes, I agree that is the case. Yep.
So it's always been a thing. So
Sure.
I like to use that going into what you're talking about here. So regardless of the fact that was happening then, and it was a terrible thing, and the 13th Amendment abolishes slavery. And that's a good thing, because that gives us something to look at, to say that should never happen again. No one should ever have to live in servitude for zero compensation to someone else, right? And America kind of set that standard, right? And it's up to us to make sure that we continue to uphold that, right? Because other places around the world right now, that's not the case, even to this very day. There's a lot of people that are in slavery, children, women, men, and it's a bad thing in every instance. So using that to go into these amendments, like we talked about, there's one that I would really like to talk about. And I know that you got excited about how excited I got about this.
I like people with passion. I really do. I love passion. So go for it.
So the Constitution has the first 10, which is the Bill of Rights, right? And then we have a couple more amendments after that. That are really important too. And the 14th Amendment, right? I've been talking so much about the 14th Amendment right now and all of my social media and the things that I'm doing, because no one talks about the 14th Amendment, right? We bring up the First Amendment. Oh, you have the right to protest. You have the right to write whatever you want, or say whatever you want about somebody else. And we have the Second Amendment, right? And everybody's like, oh, you have the right to bear arms. And they totally forget about the first part that says it starts a well-regulated militia, right? That's the the first part of the Second Amendment, right? So you're breaking these amendments apart. People know about those two, right? You can say whatever you want, and you can protest, and you can have a gun, right? That's what the Constitution's about. It's like, oh, no. And the Fifth Amendment is one that people might know a little bit about too. And they're going to say something along the lines of, that's the one where you don't have to testify against yourself in court, right?
I know that one.
Okay, that's a little bit, right? But it goes on in the Fifth Amendment to say even better things, because that's part of it, that you don't have to testify against yourself. But it also goes on to say, nor shall a person be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Now, just imagine if we lived in a world, Aaron. Imagine if we lived in a place where that was applied. It wasn't something that's hidden, some document somewhere that's in this glass case somewhere that we say, oh, yeah, we have the Constitution. It was actually applied. And so if we fast forward and we go to the 14th Amendment, right? The 14th Amendment is very important because it takes the first 13 amendments and it locks them into place. And it locks them into place and gives it to all of the U.S. citizens. And what it says here in Section 1 is all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States in the state where they reside. Most people look at that and they say, oh, yeah, that gave slaves citizenship. That's what the 14th Amendment is. And it's like, I just want to get sick when somebody says that, because that's part of it and that's important. But what it goes on to say is so much more impactful to this very day. It says, no state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of the citizens of the United States. Could you imagine if there was no law that could abridge the privileges that were given to you from the Constitution? And it goes on to say, nor shall any state deprive any person. So important. I'm going to say that twice. Nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. There it is, that second time, the Fifth Amendment, and it said it verbatim again here. Nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny any person within his jurisdiction the equal protections of the law. The U.S. Code says that if a person deprives someone of their constitutional life, liberty, or property, it's a felony. And punishment by prison time.
Does this happen? I mean, because it doesn't seem like it's being applied. I don't
That's
see
what I'm saying, Aaron. That's it right there. It's not being upheld. We are being bamboozled, right? The show that I just did, Jason and I did our first show.
It's a plug here, bamboozled.
Yeah, right, bamboozled, right? I love that word, and it's so true. We're being fooled, right? We're being taken. And we're being swept under the rug. Oh, you have these constitutional rights. Everything is all good. It's like, do we really, right? Do I really have life, liberty, and property without the due process of law? So you talked a little bit about Black people, because of this color of their skin, they're going to have, criminal things or whatever it is. Like, that's all BS. I almost said the word, but I stopped myself, right? Because those things, if that happens to someone because of the color of their skin, the person that did that needs to be put in prison for 10 years for depriving them of their 14th Amendment right. And that's up to us, Aaron. Mm-hmm. That's up to us, the people. Right. You know what? I need to understand what that means. And our elected employees need to be upholding that. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Should be taking an oath to the Constitution that says, you know what? I'm not going to deprive anybody of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. I don't get to just pull somebody over and just say, hey, you look kind of suspicious. I'd like to know what you're up to. Right. Sorry, how did that go? But we live in a society where it's okay, right? We look at these stay-at-home orders, right? Is you need to stay locked in your house and you can't leave and you got to wear a mask on your face because I said so. Depriving of liberty at all, the ability to do as one pleases. I mean, how the country was set up and how we're operating is totally different things. So when we talk about systemic racism, there's problems with the laws of the United States. Yeah. There's problems with the people and how they interpret it. When it comes to the Constitution, there's no systemic racism. That crap is clear. And if we could uphold that, it would solve all of our problems. Our employees need to fall in line.
And see, and unfortunately, we the people cannot come together to make that happen because of, as we talked before, the divisive nature of everything. If you look at one news media outlet, they're saying, white people are bad, terrible. They're coming in with guns and ready to kill everybody. You look at another news media outlet, these black people are coming in savages to tear up communities. So you have people looking at this one, oh, I hate them. And then they're looking at that one, oh, I hate them. So we're just doing this bashing together at each other. And nobody can come together to actually uphold any of this stuff that you're saying. And, it's unfortunate because a lot of things, I do agree with you on a lot of things, that there are things that our government officials should be held accountable for. But that's not happening because we can't even come together collectively, at least for that. I mean, I'm not saying that we have to go to barbecues together, but I'm saying we could at least be able to come together to say, all people should be afforded the same opportunities. And that's in the, criminal system, like you said, even being stopped by the police, because I've had that happen to me before. I've been stopped for no reason. I mean, and asked me, why am I here? Or why am I coming through this town or where I'm going? And it's like, excuse me, and I mean, that's unacceptable, but it happens all the time. So how do you propose that, we do this? How do you propose it? Because like you said, it's there, but it doesn't, a lot of people don't feel like it applies to all people.
Mm-hmm. They've been bamboozled, right? They've been fooled into thinking it doesn't apply to them, and the education hasn't been there. So who's the real enemy when you're talking about the different narratives? I've seen some news articles come out on me recently. I'm like, geez, who's that guy? Like, I wouldn't want to know that guy, right? But it's like, if they've taken the time to got to know the content of my character and who I am and sat down with me, or do they point the finger and say, oh, white skin, guns, crazy guy, right? And also, we can have barbecues together. We'll have a party when this is all done, right? Come on.
I'm just saying, I'm laughing because yes, that can happen, but it's just like, come on, how do we even take that first step? And again, and I hate to, and I don't want to jump onto this whole train of this war on the media, because I just had a show about that, and I met a really nice journalist, and he talks about this. But I do believe that there is a agenda in place, and whenever I use the word agenda, people call me conspiracy theorist, so that's that. But there is an agenda in place to keep this divisive nature going. I do believe that because it's so blatant. It's so blatant how you have these extremes on both sides that are causing people to hate each other, and it's even more so. I mean, it just seems like it's getting towards this whole civil war. So I think that like you mentioned with the whole stay-at-home order. So as we talked about, like with COVID already had people very, afraid and fearful. And some people, rightfully so, I don't take anything away from a person, especially if they experience some things close that hit home to them. But with that said, these fears that started with that, and then now you have people, fighting in the street, and you see fire, and it's just, and, now we're talking about police reform and defunding the police, and all this stuff is happening. So I think people are acting in fear a lot right now. And it's so interesting to watch the different ways people act when they have fear, the anxiety, how it kind of is shown. And I know you want to talk a little bit more about COVID and what you feel about it. If you want to, talk about that, because I do believe that is kind of assisting in some of these narratives and some of this fear that's going on right now.
Yeah, definitely want to jump into that and just make a quick comment too. You ask, like, what's the solution here? Conversations like this, being loud about it, being passionate about it, aiming to get that information out, is really kind of like our last ditch effort, because the media is trying to divide us. You look at the things that are being posted by the big news channels, and they are very divisive, and it comes from both sides, right? Neither side is innocent of, and they want to take jabs and they want to poke. So really it's conversations like this. It's people, sharing those messages and being loud, and until I get, either taken out or grown old and perish, I'm going to be loud and I'm going to be passionate, because this stuff matters, right? And I have a whole bunch of kids. I want them to be able to grow up in a place where they are free and they have the liberties to do what they want to as well. So you ask about COVID.
Yeah, I know you have some strong feelings about that. So, and this is such a really sensitive subject for people. So, and I know that, but I mean, we have to talk about it. It's happening right now. We're living in it. So, what do you feel about the COVID situation? Because I know you had some strong, passionate feelings about that, and about the governor and how she's, enforcing these stay-at-home orders.
Yeah. Who knows if we go back to a stay-at-home order, but I think that might be coming. I look at the numbers in the data, which it's somewhat mind-boggling why Gretchen Whitmer to this day still refuses to provide the data to the general public that she has and using to make the decisions that she's made. I just kind of ask myself that, man, is that really the best approach? Well, I have all this data and it's really good data and it's telling me that things are really bad. Can we see that data? No, absolutely not. Go stay in your house and lock your doors. And, I don't know, just throws up a little bit of a red flag to me. Why not share the data? Because we have, the right to life, liberty, and property here. So that means that I should be able to be smart enough to make my own decisions, like you said earlier, right? We should be able to see that data. So it's mind-boggling why that data is not there. I'm also blown away why we're seeing that over a third of all of the deaths in Michigan were from nursing homes where Gretchen put patients that were COVID positive into these nursing homes. That's a very bad thing. Right now, there's an investigation going on with her and 5 other governors that put COVID positive patients. And we're seeing like nationwide that over 40% of the deaths from COVID are from nursing homes. That's a really big number. I think anybody would agree that 40% of really anything is a really big number. That's almost half. That's every other person. With the children, like when we talk about like going back to school and all that, I mean, the death rate for children is 0, right? I think there's maybe been a couple of them around the country, right? I don't know, but it's not enough to move the needle to even put a percentage on it. And so, you talk about agendas and stuff like that. People come out, oh, conspiracy theorists or whatever. But I'm just looking at some of these things and I say, hey, is there another agenda that's going on here, right? Is these decisions really being made in the best interest because of COVID? Something that we're not even seeing really affect many people. As the numbers climb for the number of cases, the deaths aren't climbing incrementally with it as well. The deaths are staying somewhat, consistent low or going down. And we see the number climbing of cases because they're testing more, which is taking the death rate and pushing it even lower.
So let me ask you. Oh, I'm sorry. I just want to ask you this because I always want to ask people. So you do believe there is a virus? Do you believe there? Okay, so you believe there's a virus. You just don't think that it's as major as they're making it to be. Is that your stance?
When you talk about like, the media creating a divide and media creating a narrative and stuff like that, let me ask you a question here. If the media was not around, if we didn't have social media, if we didn't have anything else, do you think people would be wearing masks and worried about COVID-19?
Probably not as much, I would say, because I mean, honestly, most of my concern with it has come. I mean, it does come from the media or from social media, people sharing things and things of that nature. So yeah, you're probably right that it probably wouldn't be as high.
Yeah. I think there's been a lot of that narrative that has continued to be pushed and the numbers and all of the different talk and the creating the fear around it, right? And it's been over time. It's been months of creating this fear and continued discussion about it and this thing looming over our heads. And so yeah, I mean, me personally, like, do I think there's a virus? Yes. I mean, we are surrounded by viruses right now. I'm sure I have viruses all over me, as with every other person, right? That's why we wash our hands and we take care of ourselves. Viruses and bacteria are everywhere. And we see this COVID-19 pandemic. And I don't know, it's not adding up to what I think was projected when this first came out. Hundreds of thousands of people dying, and America is going to be just decimated across the land, and that's not It's not the case. It's not what we're seeing. And there's so many recoveries. And this is from the CDC. Worldometers has this whole thing. They pull this data from. 99% of all cases are mild cases that don't even require hospitalization. And it's interesting because when COVID first started, it was all about with Gretchen, like, oh, we got to flatten the curve. We got to flatten the curve. We can't overwhelm the hospital. Stay at home. I mean, any person in their right mind is going to say, I should step back and take some precautions, because really, what is going on here, right? Is this the zombie apocalypse? Do we get zombies finally?
I'm really into that. So I did think that maybe it was time, because I've been prepared for. So when this first started, I am prepared. So the thing, yes. The thing is that honestly, of course, when it first started, it was this. It was huge, because I mean, it was everywhere. It was coming in every direction. You couldn't even talk to a person without them bringing it up. So of course, it was this thing like, oh, this is it. This is what we've been, people like myself have been like, okay, this is what we knew was coming eventually. So yes. Hold on. Let me see. We have a question here. Let me show it to you, then you can see it too. So what does Ryan think about the states where there haven't been as many restrictions, having higher cases and deaths like Florida?
Thanks for the question there, Jason. Do you have the numbers offhand, Jason, that you could put up there? I don't know how many. There's been a lot of restrictions in Florida too, and I think Florida is going back into restriction mode right now as well. I don't know what Florida's numbers are.
Okay. I guess basically, I think he's just trying to say, like, for places that didn't have as many restrictions starting off, because I think it was like Florida, Texas. It was a couple of states that were like, we're not buying this. We're not going to have restrictions. And then they're saying based on the numbers that have been released. And don't ask me for numbers, because I don't do numbers, just because I just don't. And I know it's a lot of people that I know that do them. So I follow their numbers, because I really, because I have a lot of questions. And again, I don't want anybody to misunderstand it, because people get very sensitive about this conversation. I'm not saying that COVID is not real. I know it's real. I know people who have died from having this virus, with other things. My concern is, and I guess my question is, do they? Because, they say, oh, we have 300 new cases of positive, COVID patients. And then it's like, my question is always, are they positive as in they tested and they said positive but have no symptoms? Or are they positive? Because when I hear positive, I'm thinking in the hospital,
on the ventilator.
Yes.
Get him.
That's where and maybe it's because I'm a very dramatic mind, but that's what I envision. And then I started hearing, okay, well, this was just from testing. So, so he said, okay, let me show you this. He looked it up.
23K confirmed cases. And how many deaths go along with that, Jason? And just before you continue there, that narrative that you think of there, 4K deaths, that narrative that you think of, what was the age range, Jason? Do you have the average age that they died? And that's what, and I felt this way the whole time, that when they talk about cases, we have, 2,000 new cases here in Michigan, that it's that scenario you're talking about, that there's 2,000 people like coughing up blood, like it's bad, or is it 2,000 people, or is it 999 or 1,999 that are like, yeah, I'm totally fine. Because numbers can look big and scary. 23,000 people have it, 23 million people had the cold, right? 55 million people had the flu, right? I mean, those are big, scary numbers too. So I don't know, when all the smoke clears, I think we're going to have a different perspective. Is it a virus? Yeah, absolutely. Is it something that we need to shut the entire world down for? Gosh, right? That's a bad decision. We have a lot of young, capable, healthy people that can keep going on. And, to come back to the liberty stuff, right? I mean, here's a leadership lesson for somebody like Gretchen Whitmer and really a lot of these other governors. Hey, guys, here we have a virus that's hitting, and this could be very, very bad news. Go to this website. I'm going to put all the data that we have up here. If you are at risk, please get yourself into a safe place. Please do not put yourself in a place where you're going to be at risk. If you take care of people, you need to take precautions on this stuff and give a list of suggestions, because there's a lot of people out there just by very nature. If I say you have to do this, they naturally get rebellious, right? And I think America has bred that in a lot of people anyway. To kind of go back to a little bit of an approach there too, people didn't like getting locked in their houses. And was it even necessary? Because now, Fauci's got all these different things. Well, maybe the lockdowns weren't necessary. The CDC says, well, we don't even think it's airborne. You can't really pass it that well between people. Like,
Really? Are they saying that now?
Yeah, the CDC and the WHO. I mean, there's so much conflicting information, right? Every 30 seconds, somebody's got some new data point somewhere else. Meanwhile, most people are still, alive and trucking. You mentioned something a second ago. I don't know if this detail was how you meant it to be or not, but you said people that that have passed that were COVID positive with something else. And I think that there's been a lot of doctors that have spoke out that have said, yes, this person died of pneumonia, or, they had something different. They happened to test positive for COVID. Like, does that get thrown into the number to make it look even scarier? So I don't know if you can comment on that. Maybe that's not what you meant, or maybe it is.
Oh, no, I meant it. I like to be very careful when I say things, because people, when they already are emotional about things, they take the one part and run with it. So I try to be very cautious of what I say. Yes, I have talked to nurses. I have talked to one doctor, but more so nurses who have said that they were told to kind of add some extra numbers. Okay, so say for instance, and again, this is not taken away from people who have been sick with COVID-19, but I do know for a fact that nurses who are out there in the field have said that, money runs a lot of stuff. Okay. And, when you get paid more money for different things, sometimes people within those fields will help you will ask you to kind of inflate some numbers. So I have talked to nurses that have said that, if somebody, say for instance, they came in and they had some symptoms that were also symptoms of COVID-19 and never tested positive for COVID-19, that they passed away from that, that they still were told to write that it was COVID-19. Okay. So I do know from them firsthand that they said that has happened. But I also believe that people have had, like you said, different lung issues, or, obesity, or different health issues that they had already. And then they got this virus and, it hurt them. So again, I don't take away anything from anybody that has had it. I believe that it's out there. I believe that people are getting it. But I also believe that, and I will say this, I believe that whenever something presents itself, the powers that be, whoever that is, whatever that is, can use it sometimes to further an agenda. And I believe that. I mean, we've seen it before throughout history, and people will jump on that and run with it. So anyway, that's my take on that. I have a lot of theories, but that's
I like it. That's good.
I'm a thinker, and I guess throughout history, we have seen some really shady stuff, man. And we have seen people who have money want to keep money at all costs. And I mean, things happen. So my point is, again, I do believe that COVID-19, so people don't start inboxing me and giving me angry mail. I do believe it's real. But I also believe that some things aren't what they seem. So I'll just leave it like that. So you don't agree with the stay-at-home orders? I'm taking you don't agree with that? Do you think that she's overstepping her? Because people keep saying she's doing illegal stuff. So I need to understand, what does that mean? What is she doing that's illegal?
Before I answer that, I made a post way back, and I think March, when all this stuff first started happening, and my post was cases equal cash. To your point you just said there, and you're right. There's so many billions of dollars. The American people were robbed through this whole thing. It was one of the biggest money heists of all times, right? Where did that money end up? I would like to see the U.S. Congress put some committee together to track every COVID dollar and find out where it found its way through the little tree that it made its way to, and where that cash ended up, because somebody got it. But you said, I'm sorry, your question was how these are illegal. So,
yes.
People are saying, yeah, oh, it's unconstitutional for those things to happen, right? Now, if we go back and we talk about the 14th Amendment again, right? I'm going to read another definition to you here real quick. And I know some people have differing opinions on this because, this might make some people mad, but I think some people wouldn't know what to do with freedom, right? If they were like, oh, you can do as you please, you're self-sufficient now and go ahead and figure it out. And it's, the government's job to make sure that, you get to keep your liberties. Some people might not like that. So when we talk about the definition of liberty, number one, the quality or state of being free. Mm-hmm. Subpoint A for that is the power to do as one pleases. And then subpoint B is free from physical restraint. So when we look at just like the definition of itself of liberty, and then we go back to the 14th Amendment and we say, no state shall deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. And it says, no state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States. And then Gretchen Whitmer puts an order together that says, I am forcing you to stay at home. You do not get to do as you please. You must stay in your house, or you will be classified as a criminal and you can face criminal charges. Now, there was no due process of law. There was no saying, oh, well, why can't I leave my house, right? What did I do? Did I rob somebody? Did I rape someone? Did I kill
You don't think she had to do it like it was like a, something that kind of like she didn't have any, did we have time to think about that? You know what I'm saying? Like if it's true and it's this, state of emergency, sometimes you have to act, right? I mean, you have to just kind of make some decisions.
And that's where, as the people, do we allow that? Oh, there's a state of emergency, so one says, or what's that state of emergency? So now we're going to deprive people of life, liberty, and property. We're going to deprive you of that because there's a scary monster that has been created. Right. And the scary monster is not necessarily COVID itself, but what the media hyped it up to be, what they wanted it to by inflating the numbers and all that stuff. Right. And so that's where the debate comes in as from the unconstitutional perspective. Right. Are you allowed to push the liberty portion of the Constitution aside because there's some sort of a state of emergency? Someone like myself is going to say absolutely not. In zero instances, the founders didn't frame this Constitution to say, well, if there's a pandemic or, if there's some law that's passed that the governor can declare a state of emergency and then have, dictatorship like control over their people, that we can go ahead and forget about this silly liberty stuff. At the end of the day in America, if we want to have life, liberty, and property, and we want to have no person be denied equal protection to the laws, that applies in all instances. And so whether there's a pandemic, whether there's a Tyrannosaurus Rex, whether there's whatever, you can't tell me that I have to stay in my house. I get to do as I please, as long as I'm not infringing on somebody else's liberties and their life and their.
And that's where some people. So I'm just going to play devil's advocate here on both sides. That's where people have the argument because they say, okay, you are impeding on my rights or my freedoms or my liberties because if you're sick, right? Then if you get me sick because you're not wearing a mask, then now I'm sick because you made a choice not to care about me. So I think that's where the fight is here is that both, it's like, I want to be safe, but you're not helping me be safe because you're coming out without a mask. But then the person without the mask is saying, listen, this is unhealthy for me. I don't want to wear a mask. So I want to be free. So it's like this both sides thing. And how do you find a middle ground if, this is as big as they're saying it could get? Because I know it's talks of, the second wave or that we're still in the wave and it's going to, get higher and, get worse. How do we find that middle ground? Because I'm just going to, I don't know if you watched the movie. It's two movies. I can't remember the other one. I meant to write them down, but one was Let Them Live. I think that's one. These are movies from like the 80s, right? That I watched and they talk about a lot of stuff that's happening right now. Like literally a lot of stuff, where they show people kind of walking around almost like zombies, and it's like no money, and they go with like these, or you get like these scans on your hand. So it's a lot of stuff that they're proposing right now, right? It's a lot of stuff that. So my point in saying that is that I see both sides of this in regards to. We want to keep people safe. I mean, I have a mother, I have aunts, I have people close to me that are in that high risk, as they call them, the high risk, percentage. But I also understand the side that when people say, okay, once we start doing this, then we let go of this, then we let go of this. We're slowly letting go of some of our freedoms, right? So that's the part where I find a hard time to find balance. I'm just going to be honest, because it's one side of it where I say, I don't want you making us cashless. I mean, that's a whole nother topic, but, because to me, in my mind, if we're cashless, right, and everything is on plastic, at any time somebody can push a button and now I don't have money. You know what I mean? I'm without. So I have a lot of questions in regards to when people start having control over your life. But I also want to keep people safe, because I do believe that it's a real thing out there, and I don't want people to get, so I don't know how to find that balance. I honestly don't. I've been very confused about that. So what do you think, how do we find the balance for everybody to be okay? I mean, can we find that? Is that possible?
Yeah, we love to find balance in life, right? So that there's never balance in life. You bring up valid points, though, that one thing can lead to the next. And in a lot of instances, it's all or nothing. I'll give you an example related to alcohol, right? I drink zero alcohol, none, no exceptions, not even a little bit. And I used to be the exact opposite of that. I used to drink alcohol all the time, right? It was my beverage of choice. And I tried giving it up and then coming back to do it socially, right? And I found out that it needed to be an all or nothing, because either you drink or you don't drink, right? And for me, I found what works for me, right? I don't clown on somebody else. If you want to have a beer, you want to drink your Crown Royal or whatever, toast me up a shot, right? But and a lot of it can be the same with this too, right? In a lot of instances, because slowly but surely, things will continue to erode away. Well, it's just a microchip, right? It's just for identifying yourself at the store. It's just for identifying yourself with having the cash as we move to a cashless society, right? A lot of those things can start very simply. So I think a lot of it does fall back on to the people again. And it's a big responsibility to say and uphold something like the Constitution, right? To be able to really say, what does that really look like? What if we really lived there? What if we really did defund the police? The more I'm thinking about it, why not? I think that might not be a bad idea. Let's defund the police and let's use all of that funding for a constitutional militia that only job is to make sure that people do not lose their constitutional privileges.
So you agree with defunding the police?
I think we should defund the police, all of them, and move all of that cash to a constitutional militia and have people out there that are the good guys that go through the proper training to make sure people do not lose their constitutional rights, and that they make sure they know what they are and they stay safe and they don't infringe on someone else's constitutional rights. They don't go around writing tickets and picking on people, because that is bullies, is what that is. Those people are bullies. They're not looking out for people's constitutional rights. So let's defund them.
So who decides who these these citizens uphold the Constitution? Like, who decides who builds up these militias? Because so when you say defund, do you mean abolish? Do you mean like no police officers at all? Is that? I'm just trying to understand what you mean by that, because people have different understandings of what defund means. We just actually talked about that the other day on the show.
Yep. I'll say this. I don't have the exact solution. I can't say, oh, look here, Aaron, I have all the answers and it's all perfect right here. And this is, how we should do things. So with that being said, the small pieces that I do know is that, yeah, sure, let's abolish police as we know them. Right. And let's put a different system in place. What if we had a group of people, and who chooses them? I don't know. There's things to talk about there, right? I mean,
Right.
defunding the police and taking them all off the street tomorrow is not the right answer, right?
Right.
That's not the right answer at all. But what does it look like if there was people that were actually in place that knew the Constitution? How many police officers can tell you what the 14th Amendment is? And you could say, officer, are you out there making sure that no citizen is deprived of life, liberty, or property without the due process of law? You don't get to just pull people over and say, hey, you look awfully suspicious. What are you doing in this area? You don't get to eye people. You don't get to just barge in people's doors. You know, you don't get to do that stuff. Constitutional rights. But with that becomes a responsibility to the people as well. Because to have those rights and have those freedoms, when it goes back to the health talk, like you said a couple of minutes ago, that is an awareness that you need to have about yourself. Hey, do I want to put myself in situations where there's somebody else that could get me sick? Who am I caring for? How do I need to operate my life? Versus, well, you know, there's a possibility that you might have a sickness that could possibly get somebody else that I know sick, that could get one of my older relatives killed. So you have to comply, and I'm going to take your liberties away to make sure that person doesn't die. It's kind of like that alcohol thing, all or none. And it is a high degree of responsibility to make sure that you're aware of the situations you're putting yourself in. And there's not an easy answer, is there, Aaron?
I know. You know, I just, it's so much to that for me because, like I said, I've been on that end of it, and I know people that I've been with or around that have been, you know, treated in a poor way by police officers. And so I understand what you're saying in regards to rearranging some things and maybe, you know, kind of starting over on some things, because there is, I mean, such a long history of abuse of power. And I mean, that's just a given. And I mean, we can, I think that's pretty much something that most people can agree on. I would hope. I know a lot of people, you know, are right now on this Blue Lives Matter, and it's like, nobody's saying anybody doesn't matter. Well, you know, what it is that there is some abuse of power. And just like you said, within the government, you know, from local all the way up to federal, there is some abuse of power, or, you know, we wouldn't be where we are right now in a lot of things that's going on in the world. So I guess, you know, I don't want to hold you all night, but I want to know, how do you think we get to this common ground? Because, you know, in my mind, I hear what you're saying, and I'm like, that would be fantastic if we all could rise up, because it's happened in other parts of the world throughout history where the people has, you know, kind of rose up against the government or rose up against, you know, and I'm not saying everybody just go out tomorrow and do this, but how do you propose we take our power back, I guess? You know, Jason asked a question, find social worker education. Yeah, we could do that with the defunding the police. This was for the defunding the police. And he also said, yes, no knock warrants are unconstitutional, which I agree. But how do you think we start this? Because I'm all for having a voice. I believe everybody should have their voice. I don't believe anybody should have it taken away from them just because someone has a title. I don't think that is right. And that's not the way I try to live my life. But how do you think we do that? How do you think because we always have these ideas, right? What looks good and what we should do, but how do we actually make it, you know, tangible?
Gosh, that's such a great question, right? And great questions always lead to great solutions if you continue to persevere, right? Just like with any type of, we'll say, business endeavor, right? If you know where you're going, right? How do I get to this point in my business, right? Then you can develop a plan to get there. You know, some of the things that I'm doing here with, you know, the rallies that I've done.
Sure.
And Jason, the gentleman, he's the guy that pretty much him and I brainstormed starting these whole rallies for the American Patriot Rally. We're kind of forming this into the American Patriot Council, right? And really our mission is to restore and then sustain a constitutional government in the United States of America, right? So restore it to that and then sustain it. So with that comes a degree of planning. And so again, right, and this is too where, like, I'm not a know-it-all. Some people will be like, oh, they have an answer for everything, right? Is where I'm more like, well, I don't necessarily have the answer. You asked the right question, Aaron, right? What do we need to do in order to get there? Well, I'll tell you what will be helpful is a follow-up conversation to this. Mm-hmm. Involving more people, and then having discussions of what that looks like trying to find common ground. Things with messages are always so powerful, right? If people know what they're doing, right? And that goes back to a lot earlier in the conversation. You said you know who you are, so somebody can call you a mean name. They can say something about you. People can come, oh, he's a racist. He's a mean. He's a KKK member. He's a this and that. None of that stuff phases me because I know who I am. Say whatever you want. That's fine. Truth will prevail. Your lies only go as far as what you remember you said about me to try to hold it against me the next time, right? The truth will prevail. So the solution in my eyes is continuation of conversations like these. People with passion willing to step out and do something about it, make them public, right? And put themselves out there. Continue to share that message, continue to share that education, and fight for whatever that right is, that the right thing for us to do here. So what is that solution? I don't know. I challenge us to the people in my group, the people watching this, the people we continue to reach, to have those conversations and to try to find seats at the table with each other to say, hey, how do we get back to Amendment 14 in this country? And then restore it and then sustain it, because everybody deserves that and understands what responsibility comes with that. And that ain't no easy task.
It's really not, because this is hundreds of years of, this is a long time of stuff happening the way it is. And, kind of getting worse, a long time, even though people sometimes think it's gotten better, and I really appreciate you for, saying that it's for all people, because a lot of times, people don't really believe that. And it's because we haven't seen it all the time, I just remember, because, now marijuana is legal in most places, right? But I know people personally who have been in prison, like put in prison for years for small little bitty pieces. I mean, you know what I mean? Like literally stuff that you can barely see. And it's like, really, wow, that's interesting. And it doesn't always go across the board with some of those consequences, right? So it looks different for different people. So I agree with you. I think having conversations is important. I am big on that. I talked to you earlier, and I use some words that I have been called, and I will say it right here because I have no problem saying it. I've been called a black nigger bitch. I've been called, anything, go back to Africa and all that, stuff that people like to repeat because somebody else said it. But the thing is that, again, that stuff it really doesn't faze me. And people, the only time I get upset is when you have the audacity to even talk to me disrespectfully, period. Like, why are you talking to me? But really, it doesn't really, I don't know how to explain, like penetrate me, because I know I'm not any of that except for black. And I love being that. So it's like, oh, really? Thank you. So the point is that, I can have conversations like this with someone that we may not agree with everything, because our experience, you and I, Ryan, we've had different experiences. I mean, that's a given, but I think that we should be able to come together, have a conversation, and get to a solution, because it's possible. I do believe it's possible, because I think that a lot of us are being tricked, like you said, bamboozled. It's true. When you look at I watch different media outlets purposely, okay, to kind of see the narratives and the certain words they use to describe things, and it's so purpose, like the words they use are like, on purpose. It's very strategic in the way that things are said, to make sure people stay angry, and so when I see you, Ryan, I'm angry at you, never talked to you before, don't know anything about you, don't know you have kids and a wife, don't know anything about you, but I'm mad at you just because I'm looking at you and you look like something that I'm supposed to be mad at. You know what I'm saying? And I think that happens a lot. So we do have to start talking, even if we don't agree, and we should be able to talk respectfully and find some type of common ground and build from there.
One thing that's really, really cool about the truth is the truth doesn't need any defense, right? It doesn't need anybody to validate it.
Sure.
It just is.
Yep.
Sometimes people can look the other direction, right? Some people can choose to ignore it, right, for short periods of time. But in the end, the truth always prevails. The truth, you don't ever have to think about it again. Like if you tell a lie, right,
Oh
And
yeah, you got to think about that thing.
right? Oh, what did I tell that person? And hold on a minute. Now, well, wait a minute. Last time you told me this and you said that, right? And those are very shallow, right? They hold no substance. In the long run, truth always prevails. And so if we know truth and we continue to speak truth, right? Truth will prevail. And that doesn't happen overnight, right? And it's just like within business too, right? Somebody starts a business, or you got your channel here that you're going forward. I got my channels I'm working with, right? It's like you post that video and you're like, man, why don't we have 1 million views? Why don't we have 2 million views, right? Why don't I have 500,000 subscribers, right? It's a process. You have to continue down. You got to post that next video, right? I give a shout out to my wife, Tab. If you're watching, love you, babe. You're doing fantastic with everything on YouTube. It's been years of consistency. It's been years, and so that's the thing. You don't have one conversation, right? Well, we had a great conversation. It was good. And then we went separate ways for the rest of our lives, right? Not that you have to talk to everybody every day about everything, but that's the thing, is that finding and identifying those people that are passionate and that can make differences, because there's so many people that won't step out to that. There's so many people that they want to listen, that they want to understand. They're with it, right? They agree with certain things. But so, yeah, I don't know. We probably could sit here and talk all night. I don't know how long you want to stay on here for, right? But
I really want you to give us some, closing, thoughts, because I know you have a lot. I mean, we can visit this again, because there's so much passion that you have, especially for the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and the freedoms that people are allotted. Again, I just want to before you give those closing remarks, I just want to thank you for coming on, because a lot of times people do believe that someone that looks like me, someone that looks like you, should not be having a conversation. And my goal in life is to say different, and say we can talk, we can sit civilly, and talk to each other and have some type of comment. I mean, the first thing you talked about is, oh, I have 5 kids and they all were home birth. Oh my goodness, that's awesome. I'm a doula. So I love that. I love that you do that. So that was something that we had, kind of like to bridge that gap, so to speak, to start a conversation. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate your passion. Listen, even somebody, and I'm not saying you in particular, I'm just saying anybody, if I don't agree with them, but they have passion, they believe, and they don't waver, and they stand on what they stand on, I respect that. I respect someone that can still tell me what they feel is to be a truth, even if it did. Because how some people, when they talk to you, if they'll kind of go which whatever way the masses say or whatever everybody else is saying, when people stand for what they believe in, I have a respect for that, So I do respect you in what you do, and I do believe that all people should have the same or should be afforded the same opportunities and consequence. I believe that if somebody murders somebody, they should be held accountable just like the next person, and vice versa or whatever, But my point is that I think it should be even across the board. So I agree with you on that. So and how we get there, that's a whole nother question, but this is our first step by having this conversation. So whatever you would like to leave us with, some words for people, just kind of like, your beliefs and what your purpose and mission in life is, because you definitely have a mission. You're on a mission. So tell us about that as we close out.
Yeah, the mission of what we're doing here, I'm going to preface a little bit to that.
Sure.
We talked a lot about like the power, the money and the power. People can gravitate to that, and we all gravitate to a certain amount of power in our lives. We want to have control over our own lives, right?
Sure.
We want to have money too. I mean,
yeah. Oh yeah.
Stuff with money, right? My kids need diapers. My kids need food, right? You buy all that stuff with money. So, a certain amount of power over your life is needed, and money in life is needed, right? Those can get out of control. We see these elected employees that are kind of like celebrities, right? A politician is not necessarily an elected official, right? That has pulled away from that representation and is transformed into something else. So one of the main things that I'm doing here is that I, Ryan Kelley, am not looking for the power through this to become whatever that looks like. Man, I can't wait till I get enough recognition that I can get elected into office and spend the next X number of years in there doing all this stuff and having power. I want to see the power return to where it belongs in the first place, is with the people, with what's been granted to us, the God-given rights from the Constitution, not the government-given rights, right? So what I'm looking to accomplish here is finding a way to take the power from the people, take the power from the government and put back into the hands of the people, right? And so with that mission to restore and then sustain a constitutional government in the United States of America is a very powerful mission. And that's something that won't end with my life either, right? There's not a destination for that, right?
Right.
If more people adopted that, to put the power in the hands of the people where it belongs, right? We could get a lot further with each other with all of those things. So I just want to add some inspiration to whoever's watching this or gets a chance to watch this at some point in the future, right? If you haven't read the Constitution, right? You know, you talked in the beginning about who wrote it, the era it was wrote, and forget all of that stuff and look at the words, right? Look at the words and what it stands for, and know that, and read over it and think to yourself, man, what would life in this country be like if we really followed that and we really made sure that people had those rights? It would look a lot different. We wouldn't see a lot of the issues that we're seeing today, because a lot of those stem from things that are non-constitutional. And so I just want to encourage people to dive into that a little bit and look at it with a different light. Like you mentioned, Aaron, like, oh, we were told that wasn't for us, or people think, oh, that doesn't apply to me. Well, actually, it does apply to you. Somebody else told you that it didn't, and you were bamboozled by that person. So if you are open-minded enough to look at it from a different light and say, well, let me freshen it up here real quick and see what that stands for, and then see if that would be something worth fighting for. It doesn't attach to a skin color. It doesn't attach to a nationality. It doesn't attach to a language that you speak. None of that stuff matters. What matters is that we are all people created in God's image with inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And all men are created equal. Put those up in a stone. Make that a statue. And then let's uphold that. Because you know what? That would make a damn good future. And that is the future that I'm teaching my kids about.
Oh, well, I want to wow, you're really a good speaker. No, that was good. No, I agree. We all should stand together on that. I agree with you so much. And I really hope that people of all backgrounds, colors, experiences, cultures, really start to believe that, and start to believe that they are superior in their own right, that we're all excellent in our own right. And I really wish that people would, like you said, do away with that narrative of one being higher and lower than the other, and really start to empower themselves and kind of rise up, and that's where, and I've talked about this before in regards to, the laying down the ground, and I get it. But I am a visual person, and I believe words matter. And I believe our things we speak over ourselves matter. So that's why, I don't do the laying on the ground and the, like I'm reenacting a death, because I believe that I will live, and I believe that I will walk in power just like anybody else. So I try to preach that narrative, that you have to start believing in self. You have to start believing that you do matter, and you don't really need anybody else to tell you. And I get why people want people to recognize that people matter, because I believe that the more people start to see people as a real thing, and something that should matter, something they should care for or care about, then people do act a little bit different. So I get the mindset behind it. But I believe that each individual, once we start to believe who we are, within ourselves, I really believe that we all can rise up in that power, and help each other out to gain the things that we should have within this America, and I have a whole lot of thoughts about that, because there are things, and I know people who will comment that we all are not afforded the same rights. And like we talked, I mean, it happens. But I think that the more about the law, the more you know about what is afforded to you. Because I think a lot of people just don't know. I mean, it was stuff that you told me I had no idea about. So I think that sometimes when you don't know, you don't know, right? That you don't know. So anyway, again, we can talk about this all night, but I appreciate you. We have a comment here. I appreciate you and for coming on and even because this wasn't easy because I came to you and said, I heard you were basically a racist. Can you come tell me that you're not? No, I mean, so
That's what you heard, but you know what? Okay. When Martin Luther King talks about, he looks for a day where people will judge by the content of their character and not the color of their skin, right? Mm-hmm. That's what you did. You said, okay, here's what I heard about this guy because he's a white guy, all these things people said about him, and they even called you, I guess, or whatever it was, and was talking to you about this. But you said, let me just figure it out. And maybe we had the phone call and you're like, well, yep, that was definitely confirmed that that's how that guy is, or it looks different. And here we are 90 minutes almost into a conversation, having a great conversation, judging by the content of people's character. And I'm so disappointed that a lot of these people that were at the statue thing that are coming out saying all these negative things about me and all these things, like none of them took any time to get to know me, what I really stood for, who I really was, what my value system was. It was strictly based off something that a few people told them or what they just made up in their mind. And
or what we've been given. And that goes back to what I'm saying. We've been given a certain narrative. We've been given it. And you either receive it or you say, wait a minute, I don't want to take that in. And that's how I try to live my life, and of course I know it's people that don't like me because of how I look, and that's okay because it does not change anything about how I'm going to walk. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to still walk tall. I'm going to still walk short, and I'm going to still walk confident because I know who I am. So it doesn't impact me that way, but people are getting hurt. People, it's a lot of stuff going on right now. So that's why I think that sometimes, the more we have conversations, we can dispel some things, and we also can at least find a common ground where we can sit peacefully and, not hate each other. So again, thank you so much. I appreciate you. Where'd you go?
Plugging my computer in. Battery's about to die. I don't want it to just
gotcha. Okay. No worries. So anyway, yeah, I really appreciate you for coming on. I know you have children and your wife is so gracious because I know you had your other show and now you're doing this. And I'm sure she probably would love to have you back. So again, thank you so much for coming on and having this conversation, taking the time to talk, openly and being transparent. I appreciate that because that's how I like to roll. So thank you so much. And you want to tell us a little bit about your show real quick and then we can get off.
The Bamboozled show?
The show that just premiered today?
Yeah. I guess there's not too much to say about it. Jason Howland and I, we're going to start rolling out this show. Our first episode was today. We're going to have more people come on too. We want to get different viewpoints on there. We actually should have you come on to that show, right? On there. I think helping each other's audiences would grow. I'd love to continue to promote you. I think you're amazing.
Thank you.
We're just going to be talking about a lot of hot button topics, right? Because that's important. It's always good to find common ground, but it's also good to talk about the tough stuff and have the tough conversations. Because tough conversations is where the progress is made, right? The common ground, like, I like cheeseburgers too, right? You don't get anywhere with that, right?
Exactly.
So you have to talk about the tough stuff. So yeah, it's just a show we're going to do. I mean, I'm all over social media. I'm just seeking truth. I'm just seeking freedom and liberty. And I like friends and I like patriots.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Ryan. I appreciate you. I wish you the best of luck and have a great evening.
You as well.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye. Well, that is another episode of the Breaking Bread Village. Again, I want to thank Ryan for coming on and taking time to be here with us today and sharing his viewpoint. Again, we don't always have to agree on every little thing, but I think that we all can agree on that everyone should be afforded the same type of opportunities and the same consequences, right? So I think that, we can start to work together as a whole to make that happen. And it always starts first with being able to see people as people and having those conversations, those tough conversations like he spoke of. It's important, it's necessary, and it's just the way we kind of move forward. You got to break through some things to be able to kind of get to the light, so to speak. So thank you again for being here with us this evening, and I wish you guys a great night.